So, the ending to Ahsoka Episode 4. That ending had 2005 me when I was around 11 years old that you're probably seeing on screen right now. I mean, who do you think I tried to be like? Well, not maybe be like, because that would have been a bit disastrous, but look like. You see the lightsaber, you see that haircut. You don't think people took the piss out of me back then for that? I don't care. Anakin was my guy. We need to talk about that ending and the theories of what is really going on there. I'm seeing already when I briefly browse social media about that ending, people were saying, oh, it could be this, or it could be that. I've got an idea of my own. Would love to know your thoughts on that, but let's go throughout the events of this episode, recap what we saw, because this episode was probably the most action-packed, and I'm guessing probably most people's favorite. So go on to like this video if you do. Go on to enjoy it, of course, and would really appreciate you sharing this, subscribing if you enjoy the Star Wars content. So right at the beginning, everyone, we're picking up basically where we left off. And this moment somewhat foreshadows where things go towards the end. And this is when Ahsoka suggests to Sabine that, you know, we face a difficult choice. If we can't make the journey to find Ezra, then no one should. So maybe in the middle of the fight, when we're confronting Shin and Baylan, we might have to destroy it. As you can tell already, Sabine is like, but he'll be stranded out there. But the thing is, Ahsoka kind of, you know, the lesser of two evils, I suppose, would rather that than bring back Thrawn or allow him to return as heir to the Empire. Now, I felt bad for Huyang here because this is when he gets jumped. And to be fair, though, he puts up quite a good fight. And I have to say, this is where the fun truly begins because he gives Ahsoka and Sabine quite a heads up by knocking out the lights on the ship. So we have Sabine and Ahsoka go out there. Really appreciated seeing this action with both of them together. Sabine using her blasters, Ahsoka just deflecting and destroying the droids. It was just all really quick, sudden, efficient combat, and that's what I like to see. And they played with a bit of that, like really fast, blunt combat this episode, but then also spending their time with a little bit of a dance between some exchanges, and we'll get into that more in a little bit. But I was thinking in this moment, from Baylan's perspective, surely the smarter move would have been to wait until everyone could move in together. So what I mean is, you know, a couple of these droids, all of these other followers, plus Shin, Hati, and Marek, because then maybe, you know, Ahsoka and Sabine could have been overwhelmed. But as a result of what they just did, they've kind of just alerted Ahsoka and Sabine that they know exactly where they are and to expect now Shin and Marek in the woods. And that's basically exactly what happened next. But meanwhile, with the New Republic fleet, I didn't know if we were going to revisit them anytime soon, but I'm glad that we did because we had Hera do a very Hera thing. And that is, okay, well, if you won't give me a couple of ships to at least look into what the heck is going on here, especially when there is so much evidence to warrant a teeny tiny investigation, such as literal video footage of 2 fallen Jedi going onto a New Republic ship, slaughtering loads of New Republic officers, springing free Morgan Elsbeth, Corellia, oh wait, Morgan Elsbeth's previous shipyard, and now there's a hyperdrive out of her old shipyard. Hera is doing what she feels is best, and that is looking into it anyway. I like how they included that there's other people who don't agree with the leadership of the New Republic, and we had Carson, some other X-Wings assist her. The only thing I did kind of think was a bit off here, and sure, this might be nitpicky to some, but, you know, bringing her son Jason along to something that could be potentially very dangerous. I mean, I tried looking at it in the way that, oh, he needs experience, and even though he's only like, what, 10 years old, maybe he's coming along for like an apprenticeship of what it could be like out there. But I do kind of sense that I just don't know if you would really risk your child's life if you're walking into something that, as Hera believes, could be insanely dangerous and to do with Grand Admiral Thrawn's return. This is when, quite literally, we have Sabine and Ahsoka run into Marek and Shin Hati. And I found it funny how Ahsoka kind of seemed, you know, amused or like, you know, was smiling when she saw Sabine running off to, you know, fight Shin Hati in the woods. But I don't know about you, but I was thinking this at the time. I was trying not to think that deep into it, but it's interesting to me that Sabine goes for the trained apprentice, of whom I think we can assume Baylan trained her from a very young age, you know, typical to that of a youngling. So she's been trained in lightsaber combat and that of the Force. And Ahsoka decides to have Sabine, of all people, to be Shin Hati's opponent, whereas Marek is left for Ahsoka. Whereas at face value, at least to me, you may disagree with me here, Marek seems like more of the additional henchman rather than that of the proper trained Fallen Jedi, if you will. So it feels like it should kind of be the other way around. So personally, I really enjoyed these fights. I love how they were happening side by side. We did have Sabine get force pushed back into a tree with her helmet flying off, and I was like, oh god, oh damn, like this isn't starting off great. I love how with Ahsoka versus Marek, she comes off just so experienced here. And it's like, well, duh, she is so experienced. But it's just more the way that they're choosing to execute this lightsaber combat in this episode, with the way it's filmed here, with the choreography. It really does come across more like the fight is somewhat of a sparring dance. So that's teased in this fight here, but it comes out even more so between Baylan and Ahsoka, where you kind of have these exchanges, but then you kind of take a step back and then the lightsaber stance changes. And the way they kind of mix that in with the track in the background, building up the tension, as I said, it really is more of a dance. And that's not me saying that the fight is any less fluent than what I want it to be, because I'm actually quite a fan of the prequel levels of fluency of fighting, although I do admit, as I've said before, it's a bit too much like, okay, pointless hits for the sake of hitting. So I feel like what they've done with Ahsoka here is a nice balance of that, but also the original trilogy kind of, deliberate strikes, but also making it, again, more of this like samurai-esque dance where you do have kind of quick moments, but then it's like, okay, let's make this very artful and literally change our stance and size each other up as we're about to continue this fight. So I really enjoyed that. Now, I have to admit, I did kind of find it funny when, we've had all of these fan theories, and then Marek starts to like, right, I'm going to do my last option here. I'm going to start spinning my rotating lightsaber blade, and then literally Ahsoka one punches him, slices him up, and then that's it, he's dead. But the interesting thing is, it's like he shriveled into a husk, like his arms went from like beefy to just, straws, and that's because all this dust and energy kind of came out of him. So I think it may have ended up being Night Sister magic. Maybe Morgan Elsbeth was somewhat, simulated into Marek's position fighting Ahsoka. So technically, the theories about Ezra are wrong, the theories about Starkiller were wrong, but those who were applying the Night Sister controlled Ezra, you were kind of half right. Obviously, no Ezra, but I'm assuming this was a Night Sister somewhat dummy, just magic controlling a suit of armor. Now, Shin Hati seeing this kind of spooks her. She's now thinking, as I think anyone would, oh god, I'm about to have Ahsoka come after me, as well as this kind of newbie person I'm already battling. But that's when Sabine says, go after the map, and that makes Shin happy, because she's like, you're gonna regret this. I did feel like it was very predictable where things were gonna go. I didn't think that Sabine was gonna be bested again. It was fairly obvious that somehow she was gonna get the drop on Shin here, and I have to admit as well that I'm happy it wasn't the force push, because we got to that moment in where we had Sabine get basically more or less bested by Shin Hati, and she kind of did the force push. There was even that sound effect, but obviously there was nothing there. But instead, Shin Hati's confidence in this moment was somewhat her downfall, because Sabine surprised her with her somewhat blaster fire on her wrist there. And then Shin used her Batman trickery to get away with a bit of theatricality, if you will. I feel like it was kind of convenient that Sabine, she had probably, let me put it this way, she had a bit of plot armor, and on paper, Shin should have just completely demolished. But yeah, especially when we saw her ability to force choke later on. My god, it'd be kind of handy if you pulled that stuff out in a fight, but again, I'm trying to withhold the nitpicking here. Okay, so up next, some really cool stuff happens. We have Ahsoka meet Baylan Skoll, and we get some interesting dialogue here. So this is when Baylan is just sat there with his hood up. I love the mood there. But he says, Anakin spoke highly of you. And she kind of dunks him saying, interesting. He never spoke about you. And he's like, well, everyone in the Order knew Anakin Skywalker. Few would live to see what he would become. So I guess when fleeing, because I don't think every survivor of Order 66 knows that Anakin Skywalker became Darth Vader. So I have to assume that when he was fleeing the temple or wherever he was or whatever the heck was going on there, I kind of want to be a bit nitpicky with this. I want to know exactly how he knows Anakin Skywalker was Vader, because my reasoning for it is that he would have witnessed, in a similar way to Reva, him at the temple slaughtering people. But there was a theory out there that maybe the way that he began to train Shin Hati is because maybe Baylan was out there on a mission to pick up a youngling during Order 66, and so he escaped from a distant world when he was already on the way to, collect Shin Hati to bring her back to the Jedi temples. But if that was the case, then he wouldn't necessarily know that Anakin was Vader. So, I don't want to go on about this for too much longer, but either way, somehow he knows for sure that Anakin Skywalker became Darth Vader, which is meant to be, and I emphasize, meant to be quite a secret in the galaxy that only a few people know. Baylan says, the only reason I'm here is to secure the future. Ahsoka naturally says, for you, because, you're kind of going a bit dark here, so maybe there's some Sith-esque ambitions here, but no. Baylan says something far greater. He says, I'm not starting a war, but Thrawn will. He goes on to say that it is an unfortunate evil, but speaks to a greater truth. One must destroy in order to create. And that's the only insight we've got to Baylan's motivations here. So he doesn't want to start a war, but he's like, okay, Thrawn will, but I kind of low-key already support it because, it's an unfortunate evil. It speaks to a greater truth. One must destroy in order to create. Okay, I get what you're saying. So, Baylan, are you telling me that you liked the Empire days, what Anakin ensured and what he brought on, the very thing that, meant that you had to survive during Order 66? Does he think that when Thrawn returns and creates a new Empire, that will be better than, the New Republic? I'm not saying the New Republic is perfect, by the way, but I'm just questioning it. So he wants a new Empire to be made. He does, as he said himself, believes that there's a greater truth one must destroy in order to create. And all I can take away from that is that he thinks an Empire regime is better than what is going on right now. And I don't understand why. I think that's what I want to understand here. Why? Why do you think that bringing an Empire back will be better than what's going on right now? And if so, I'm not saying that means he supported the previous Empire. Maybe he thinks Thrawn's version of a new Empire will be better. But it's just, why? It felt like very surface level dialogue to me. Now, again, Ray Stevenson, awesome. I'm not critiquing any of that. He's fantastic. I love him in this role. I thought this exchange still was kind of cool, but again, it felt kind of like surface level bad guy. Oh, I want something far greater. Basically, you need to destroy to create something new, and that something new will be a new Empire. I'm not going to tell you why I kind of believe that will be better, but it's going to be better than the somewhat sense of more freedom the New Republic is giving right now. But why, Baylan? I want to know why. Maybe, just maybe, we're going to hear a bit more about that. Even though I've already spoken about the Shin Hati and Sabine fight, this is when we kind of cut back to that, and I have to admit, at this point, I was so engrossed in the Baylan and Ahsoka thing going on that I kind of almost entirely forgot that Sabine was fighting Shin. And that's not to put that down, it just speaks to how kind of like, oh, this is so cool with what's going down with Ahsoka and Baylan. We have Ahsoka get to the map. It seems to completely burn her hand. With Shin Hati arriving, obviously this leads Ahsoka to believe that maybe she killed Sabine, so we literally have Ahsoka completely smack Shin into the side of the ruins. And of course, this is when Sabine arrives and Ahsoka tells her to destroy it. And this is what I meant by earlier with the foreshadowing. Sabine just couldn't quite do that there and then, so she shouts at Baylan to step away from her, but Baylan refuses and knocks Ahsoka down into the sea. So this is when we have Baylan try and, really appeal to Sabine's desires here. So this is when he uses the Force, closes his eyes, and it's somewhat of a, your thoughts or your feelings betray you, Sabine, because he can read that he feels that Ezra Bridger is the only family that she has left. So he says to her, you and I share a common goal to make this journey, to be, reunited with your long-lost friend, and she is faced with, okay, I can destroy this, still with him right here in front of me right now, or I can still give it over to him. And, in a very, very tropey way in this moment, I was thinking when she was about to do it, she would still just, I don't know what she would have done after that, but still just shot it or done something. But she did it. They finally did something that wasn't tropey, and she gave it to him. She's so desperate to see Ezra again, even if she's reunited with him as a prisoner, because, when they get to Thrawn, and I don't know what state Ezra will be in, but she's going to be in cuffs. But I think that is just truly enough for Sabine. And, after all the years of missing him and feeling alone with no family, that trade was somewhat worth it to her. And I wonder how Ahsoka's going to react to seeing her apprentice do this. Shin, in the meantime, comes in completely force-choking Sabine, and luckily we have Baylan command her to release Sabine, and I do find this hilarious. You can tell Shin absolutely hates Sabine, and I feel like that's going to be an interesting dynamic to follow now that Baylan is forcing Shin to restrain herself in front of Sabine and basically do anything you can with every fiber of your being to not murder this person, because I gave her my word. So now in this moment, Baylan gets word from Morgan Elsbeth to destroy the star map. He makes his way to the Eye of Sion with Sabine and Shin, and that is when Hera arrives with the X-Wing pilots, and yeah, that they plan on jumping to hyperspace with them right in their way, and we see this happen, and quite literally it's like an equivalent of a massive EMP affected all of these ships, and this sequence was really, really cool. Just the way they shot it, the effects in this moment, it looked completely chaotic. At least she can go back to the New Republic now and just be like, I told you that there's something to be concerned about here, even though they might now look at her and be like, well, you've now taken a couple of people with you, you've got them killed. We still don't see this as a threat because we're completely a bunch of dumbasses. And yeah, I wonder what's going to happen with Hera now. But I guess she's going to maybe try and rendezvous with Ahsoka. So at this part, we see the edge of the cliff. We see the waves of the sea. And I love this transition, by the way, from the waves into the somewhat mystical waviness of the flooring of the world between mother frickin' worlds. So this is when we hear Anakin Skywalker say, hello, Snips. And of course, Ahsoka's like, Master. And she feels like she's going crazy initially. And he says, I didn't expect to see you so soon. And she turns around and we see Hayden Christensen there as Anakin Skywalker, long hair, Revenge of the Sith, Clone Wars-y-esque look. And it is brilliant. And you can definitely tell, at least in my opinion, that compared to what they did in the Obi-Wan show, and this was a bit of my criticism there, like nothing against Hayden, I don't think he looks like an old man, but in the Obi-Wan show, to portray him as a Padawan with the shorter hair without any kind of brushing up of the face, it was a bit too uncanny if he's really meant to look as he did in Attack of the Clones. Now, what they did here is exactly that. You have Hayden, but kind of with like one of those apps where it smooths out your face. It's very extremely light CG. He doesn't need a bunch. It's just slight smoothing. And now, as a result of that, he looks like a spitting image from that of the Revenge of the Sith look. And guys, in this moment, the nostalgia wave that hit me, this was incredible. Absolutely. I loved it. I teared up. It was just that emotional for me. And I'm sure many of you will get that. Some of you might be like, really though? But a lot of you I know will understand, especially if you kind of grew up with this character like I did. And when it fades to black, guys, don't forget we had the Vader theme there. Now, I know a lot of people are reading into that, but I honestly think that is truly just to show the duality to Anakin's character. I don't think it's necessarily leaning into something more, oh, this isn't quite right here. I think it's like, hey, you have like the really positive Anakin feelsy kind of music going on there. He's there on screen. And when it cuts to black, of course, you kind of need to like play the Vader kind of vibes there as well, because he has been both people. So let's run what could have happened here. So on top of Ezra and Ahsoka having been in the Worlds Between Worlds before, are they really saying that Anakin Skywalker, because let's entertain this theory of a previous, like, distant past version of Anakin during the Clone Wars time, because this is what some people were thinking, and he saw, like, a older version of his apprentice and just pulled her out as she was dying. So for those reasons, and I'll take the L if I'm wrong, if it actually is somehow a story that we didn't know about, and where Clone Wars Anakin actually did go into the World Between Worlds just like Ezra did, then fair enough. But I just really don't know about that. I mean, I get what some people are saying and how she can interact with a version of her master and where they're really close. But what I think makes more sense, and this is where I still don't have it 100%, is that it is somewhat of a Force Ghost-esque version of Anakin Skywalker, and Anakin appearing as his last pure version of himself. Similar with the way in how when Anakin came back in Return of the Jedi, they edited in Hayden Christensen's Force Ghost version there, like you're seeing on screen right now, to somewhat reflect that. Now, you may be asking, wouldn't he be kind of glowy and blue if he's a Force Ghost like what we've seen before? Maybe it's just that in the world between worlds, given that it's such a cosmic-y thing outside time and space, that Force Ghosts can have more of a seeming physical form there. Maybe that's kind of unknown to us, I believe, in the canon, that they have more of a connection there, perhaps maybe even hang out there. Maybe that's just connected to a land in where they can traverse once they've transpired into the Force. I could be wrong there, but given that this is post-Return of the Jedi, I just kind of believe this theory a bit more that I'm going for here. Way more than the previous Anakin from Clone Wars era happening to be in the world between worlds, happening to pull out a future version of his apprentice, and I wonder what the conversation would be like after that. Hey Anakin, like, I can't say it too much. Spoilers. Maybe don't kill Mace Windu. Maybe don't kill younglings. Maybe, do you know what I mean? The more you open those doors, the less that makes sense. And the more you entertain the Force Ghost thing, maybe just having more of a physical, less glowy look in the world between worlds is something that makes a little bit more sense. Especially when Anakin, after Luke redeemed him, came back in Anakin appearance. Also, some more evidence here, if you want to get a bit more nitpicky about it. When the camera zooms out, there is no one there. Even when he says, "Hello, Snips," like, there's no one there. And then he just spawns in, like, quite literally. You see the whole wide bridge in the world between worlds, nobody's there, like, around Ahsoka. And then, you know, if that really was a previous Clone Wars version of Anakin, just like how Ezra was there in the world between worlds before, you don't teleport around the place. If you're physically there, real, like Ahsoka, you're there in that space. Now, Anakin here teleported in. So that tells me, mystically, he said, "Hello, Snips," and then by the time Ahsoka turned around, he then appeared. Mystically, because he's a mystical Force ghost. That's the route I'm going down, at least. This is another thing that intrigues me. I didn't expect to see you so soon. And I'm like, so soon after what? I think it's more of a reference to, I didn't expect to see you in a place like this so soon because you have so much more life left to live. Does that make sense? Like, you shouldn't really be in here now in terms of, like, not in the way Ezra got in there, but in terms of near death. And also, I think to console her, because this will be the first time she interacts with Anakin Skywalker post-Return of the Jedi, and where Luke redeemed him, and where he's back in the visual representation of when he was last kind of good, if you will. So I think we're also going to have a bit of a conversation, if I'm right here, somewhat consoling his former Padawan, his former apprentice, maybe about her past, maybe to not feel guilty. What was going to happen to him was always going to happen. She shouldn't feel bad for abandoning him. And also, I didn't expect to see you so soon here. Get your ass back out there. I had to pull you in, but get your ass back out there. But I thought I'd give you a pep talk because, Snips, it's about time we did. I think that's the vibes. Also, I know there's some theories out there that this is the sun. I don't know about that. Like, you know, I think the sun is dead, given what we saw before. Either way, guys, absolutely amazing. Love this episode overall. Had a few nitpicks. Want a bit more insight into Baylan's character. It's weird because they did give us insight, but it kind of opens more questions for me. But regardless, the action I thoroughly enjoyed. Anakin returning. Oh my god, I can't wait to see where things pick up in the next episode. So let me know all of your thoughts down in that comment section below. I've been rambling for long enough, so like this video if you got this far, especially if you got this far. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and may the Force be with you always.